everybody, Jaycie here. Oh my gosh, this month has been a blast. I'm so excited to be sitting here today getting ready to put together another paranormal ghost story podcast for you guys. I have with me Brett and Tricia, and as I always do, I'm going to kind of pass the baton so that they get to introduce themselves to you. But this is another one we're going to have one heck of a good time, you guys. So with that being said, welcome to Spooky Cartwheels and Banana Peels. Brett, will you tell us who you are and what you do?
Sure. Thanks for having me on. Great to be here. Wonderful chatting with you. My name's Brett Kelly. I'm an illustrator. I'm also a freelance graphic design artist, and I've done also a lot of work. I'm a 15-year veteran of haunted attractions and haunt acting, and doing haunt makeup and stuff like that for amusement, for corporate amusement theme parks and stuff like that.
Wow.
But mostly I do a lot of my own art projects and stuff like that. And a big Halloween fan, which also brings me to this to the podcast today. But also, the biggest point being is that the house that I grew up in when I was in my childhood was severely haunted. It was built in 1776. Mm-hmm. So, so that's probably somewhere some of my more spooky stories will come from. But we'll see how things go.
This is gonna be good. Oh my gosh, I'm so ready. All right, Tricia, who are you, my dear, and what do you do?
I'm Tricia. I'm Tricia Clark. I'm a mealtime mentor and kitchen witch. Mm-hmm. I help you transform mealtime from chaos to calm and connection so you can show up differently and connect more with your people. And the kitchen witch side is really about bringing it all back to hearth and home. And it doesn't have to be about spells and potions, although that's fun, but really bringing everything back to hearth and home and the intention and the love that you put in it. My story's not from 1776. They've all been in this house, which we bought brand new. So.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, of course, I've been on stage my whole life, you guys. So if you don't know me by now, actually, I have a new hyper focus with Cartwheels and Banana Peels in my company, and I'm very focused on helping high achieving entrepreneurs and industry leaders really follow their calling and create soul aligned businesses and directions with what they're doing in the world. So super, super exciting. And the paranormal fits into that because there is a lot of spiritual and transpersonal things that can happen to us, synchronicities, woo-woo things, scary things sometimes when you don't know what it is or how to handle it. So these conversations have been a blast. And of course, I love Halloween. So we were talking about my bats before we started recording. So lots of cool things. And I grew up in a house that had a lot of activity. But I happen to be someone that, for whatever reason, stuff happens to me almost everywhere I go, excluding the house I'm in now. Knock on something, nothing's happened here. So anyways, let's dive in. You got my attention with both of you, with the older house, which we would expect, and then with the brand new house, which then we go, ooh, it's the area, it's the land. What is it? What is it in your house? So many questions. So Brett, will you start sharing, just kick us off, start sharing some of your experience?
Sure. Yeah. My experiences definitely happened between the ages of around 5 and 11. That's when I was living in said house. I grew up in, I was born and raised, I was born in Vermont, but raised in a little town called Suffield, Connecticut, which is the northern end. It's the northern end of like a regional area called like the Pioneer Valley, almost like a tri-county area type of thing, if you will. And to give you an idea, like Suffield is so old that it actually used to be called Southfield, but because over the years it was so Southfield, then they settled on Suffield. So like the town that I grew up in was so old that the name changed because people got lazier as they got older. But yeah, it was, the house that my family lived in was built, like I said, in 1776. It was a old colonial part of the historic district of Suffield. And I guess the claim to fame of Suffield proper historically was that I guess at one point in time, George Washington had made his way through the town, like through carriages or something, on his way down to some place that was like the kind of like the old like legacy of the town and whatnot, and that's still around. But the house in particular, growing up, I definitely had a lot of weird propensities that happened to me as a child. I fell down in that house a lot. too much of like to a high frequency, like times where like I've been hospitalized. Like I have a
Oh, wow.
scar on my left side, like on my right eyebrow. Luckily, it's covered by my eyebrow. But like I would be a little kid and I would just be walking around, and all of a sudden I just take a tumble, and then carved me out. Had to get stitches and all that fun stuff. And so, but once again, I can't. Those types of things. It could be anything, you know. But I would say the most prominent experience that I had in my house that led me to reach out today was I have seen a full body apparition about 6 feet tall in a lit hallway, like crossed through an open doorway through a lit hallway. So I actually, like, through the light you could see it. It was opaque, it was not transparent, and it moved. I can actually, for all those visual watchers, like it literally moved like this, like it started very small shortly and then sped up halfway through as it cleared the hallway. And this happened around midnight. There was a sleepover one of my brothers had. We all just decided to pile into this room for whatever reason, to one of the bedrooms, which was a bigger one. And I was awake, I couldn't go to sleep, and everyone else was asleep, and I saw it, and I didn't freak out about it. It just happened so matter of factly that I was just like, huh, that's weird. So yeah, I have a couple other things, but I don't want to pass out from talking too much. So yeah,
I was going to ask,
kind of like one of my big ones.
As a kid, weren't you terrified? But then you answered it, and like I feel like I would have been trying to wake everyone up to make sure that, one, I wasn't crazy, and two, that I just wasn't alone.
Yeah, it was a very weird, like, because, well, I had also had experiences in the house where, like, I freaked out and told my parents, and then my family were like, oh, you just have an overactive imagination. Or even growing up, I used to have very vivid and intense nightmares, like night terrors, if you will. So like I still remember, I think I was around 5, I want to say 5, which is a weird, the fact that I have this memory at all, that it hasn't bounced out of my head, because I'm 40 now. You'd think after like 35 years of life it would have been upgraded with something else, but this is just a root memory I have, where I had this nightmare where I was being chased outside in a field, which looked very much like the field that was in the backyard of the house. This is a big colonial house, by the way. It was 2 floors with an attic and a basement. Basement had a coal pit at the bottom, so it would be like you could actually like play in it, but which we did until we got yelled at. But we weren't allowed in the basement, we weren't allowed in the attics for various reasons. We had a gigantic gazebo, but this gigantic field in the back, which clearly used to be used for farming back in, many years ago. But I have this dream, and this was before I would watch like horror movies, 5, 6 years old, very not well versed in all the horror movies that you'd suggest, but I had this dream that I was being chased by a man in coveralls who had like a burlap sack mask over his face, and he had a meat cleaver. And I remember so vividly that I was making my way through these waist high brushes, and he's just running through me, and it's almost like the color even felt like it felt like I was living in an old-timey photograph, like everything seemed pale and blotted out. And I remember waking up so scared that I was involved, like, and this was in the summer, so like I remember waking up like drenched in sweat, shaking, walking to my parents' room, and then waking them up, and they just were they were like, why are you wet, like why are you cold, like what's going, like. So I remember that would happen every once in a while, and seeing things like move in the middle of the night, or hearing footsteps was definitely a much more common occurrence, which is why we weren't allowed in the attic, because every once in a while you would hear like the, those types of things up above you. But we generally kind of ignored it. But those are kind of like the more like sensational experiences that I had. And even as I've moved out of the house, I can't say that what I would call like my paranormal experiences, I don't think they've kept up. So I feel like whatever I was experiencing was relegated to that house. Like I'm luckily, knock on wood, nothing seems to be following me around. Apparently I'm very uninteresting in my old age, but I'll take it.
Interesting. I'm really fascinated. Of course, one of the things that I do is work with people's dreams and nightmares. So it is an interesting thing that you brought that up, because not to say that there isn't some paranormal and that some things can get into our dreams, not to say that at all, but also our dreams, our nightmares often, and our dreams are often just symbolism, and we have to learn that language. And then if they're recurring dreams, we learn that language that's given to us so that it represents different things around us, and then we can work with it. And there are some universal beliefs, you know, when you're being chased and things like that. But it's just interesting that you brought that up today. I actually, I want to get to you in a second here, Tricia, but I have a dream that was a recurring dream that has stuck with me since I was 5 years old. And when you're doing dream work, you can work with your dreams, that same dream 10, 15, 20 years down the road. And so I'm 53, so it's been almost 50 years. And I just worked with that recurring dream the other day and had some crazy, amazing, beautiful ahas. Wow. So it's just a fascinating thing that you said it today, if you ask me.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, very, very interesting.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. I'm glad it didn't follow you though, because night terrors are really horrific. Yeah, those are, woo, my goodness. All right, Tricia.
Yeah.
Your house. You have a new house.
Yeah, we've been in this house 19 years. And it wasn't even finished when we bought it. So like we're the first people to live here. And it's odd because this ghost, this entity, I don't know, shows up just every so often, never nefarious. But the first time my kids were younger and I was working outside the home, my husband was home, and they started hearing, this was kind of their first, they thought I'd come home from work and they heard like my heels walking, you know, across the wood floor upstairs, and I wasn't home. And then they thought, well, it must be the dog. Like the dog must be walking upstairs, and turned around. The dog was laying right next to them and like literally sounded like women's heels walking across the living room floor. Wow. And this happened several times throughout the years, and they think I was home, and there's literally no other explanation for it, which has always been odd. But then every now and then things happen. Like, I think it was about 3 months ago, we were sitting downstairs. Again, it's always when we're downstairs, and only things seem to only happen like with this particular one upstairs. And we heard this crash and walked upstairs to figure out what happened. And we have this wine glass drying rack that sits in the middle of the kitchen island. And our island is wide, so it's not like, and it's got a slip stop bottom. And it's like it was in the floor in pieces, and so were all the wine glasses. And we're like, wow, was the dishwasher on? Did it have like a water puddle and it sort of just kind of, you know how like glasses kind of float across the counter? No. So we went back and looked at, we happened to have a camera in our living room.
No way.
And so we went back and looked at it, and it literally looked like the whole wine glass rack came up and fell right in the floor. No idea.
That's wild that you caught it on camera.
No idea. Yeah, so it's just, it's almost like it's mischievous, I would say.
Yeah.
And we've had a couple of other experiences that I firmly believe are not that same entity downstairs in our spare room. But that's the one that, you know, like my kids have heard it. My husband has heard it. Like it's been like, we've all had some sort of experience where we were convinced that somebody else was upstairs walking and no one has been.
Wild. That's freaking wild. I'm always so blown away. And then I'm always so blown away because people that have no experiences, they've never had an experience.
Yeah.
Before we started recording today, I was talking about my bat earrings that a former boyfriend in my life gave me. But I love the bat earrings, so of course I still wear them. I know, they're so amazing. And at the time I had a contract. I was managing a haunted hotel, which is a whole nother thing. But there was a couple of bats that kept showing up in the basement. So I ended up with the earrings. But anyway, but I remember he and I had gone to we live close to Tombstone, Arizona, and close to Bisbee, Arizona. And those are both big touristy areas. And both are considered to have some haunted things around. Bisbee, anybody that's ever driven by Old Bisbee, a lot of people say it, and I certainly feel it. There's a heavy energy just there. Not bad, not whatever necessarily, but there's just a weird energy. So when I was dating him, we decided to go and stay at it's the Copper Queen Hotel there, because they have a couple of different rooms that are supposedly haunted. And just remember him going, Jaycie, stuff happens around you. I'm really nervous about this. He was just scared to death. We did have a video camera. He was a former professional videographer. And so he got some the equipment that would work well for paranormal activity. And we videoed in the room, and it was brand new equipment. And as I said, he used to be a videographer. He knew what he was doing, and it malfunctioned during the night.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh. We have, I didn't mention I'm in Northwest Arkansas, but we supposedly have one of the most haunted hotels here. And you guys, I don't know if you've heard of the Crescent Hotel in Eureka Springs,
Oh, yes, I
Arkansas.
think I
I
have.
have.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
about 45 minutes from me. Fascinating history to the place. Really cool if you ever get a chance to check it out. Like
Oh my
I've stayed there,
gosh.
been on the ghost tour. Like the
Yeah.
place has got some weird energy. It's got some weird history, but
Well,
it's also a really cool hotel and a cool town.
Yeah, so we are
Yeah.
where I had the contract and did I managed the hotel, the bar, and the restaurant and the cafe. Is the Gadsden Hotel in Douglas, Arizona. I'm on the border of Mexico and Arizona, and it was a very in its time was a very luxurious hotel. They've done movies there, you name it. Please don't anyone go, we don't like him. I don't even care. But President Biden stayed there. You know, there's a number of different big name people that have stayed there because it was a place to go. And
Sure.
it's not so much anymore. The grand foyer is still gorgeous, and the grand staircase, the what do you call it, the lobby, whatever. It's just amazing. So when I went in there, I'm like, is it haunted? And they're like, yes. And I'm like, we'll see. Because I've experienced so much. And I only stayed there a total, I say stayed, I didn't live there, but a couple of months or so, just because it sold and things happened, right? I ended my contract. But I have never been in a location that was that active. Crazy. I'd never heard my name called. And I heard my name 3 different times, clear as day. And there was no way anyone was around me. No, it couldn't have happened. And I'm like, nah, it was wild. We had an exterminator come through, and he was like this big guy, like 6'5", you know, whatever, just this big, brave guy. He just had this big personality too. And he came out of, there was an apartment on one of the levels, and he came out of there after exterminating in there. And he was just himself, as the phrase goes, white as a ghost, right? And he claimed that the cabinet, the closet doors were just shaking while he was in there. I don't know. But I do know that whenever I stepped foot into that apartment, because I am very empathic and pick that stuff up, and I never saw anything in there, but I always felt like I was watched when I was in there. And it was one of the only, there's a 5-story hotel, including, and then you had the basement. There was only that apartment and then one other area, which was in the basement, that I was uncomfortable. And I could go in the basement, it was dark, it didn't bother me, but except for one area. And that apartment, I felt like this is not a place I should be. You always felt like you needed to get out, and you felt watched. It was very weird.
I haven't had a lot of experiences other places, but I can say that there have been several places we've stayed where they've been rumored to be haunted. And I do always feel like I have that feeling of being watched, or like the closet door or like an armoire door is like not quite in the same position it was when you went to bed, like just that kind of oddities, but never anything like specific, like visually seeing anything, or like what you're talking about, Jaycie. That'd be fascinating.
It is fascinating. I've always been super curious about it. I've never really been too scared, but it's pretty wild, the things that happen. I think I shared this on one of the other episodes. So anyone, if you've listened to all of them, I apologize that I'm repeating if I did share this. One of probably the weirdest things I had happen was in a house that my second husband and I had. And so at that time, we didn't have my youngest child, our child together. We had his child and my child, which would have been, they were like 6 and 7 probably at the time. And now they're 28 and 29. So, but I was upstairs. It was a 2-story home, and it was built in the 40s. And you could hear voices, you know, those little voices, like you can't tell what they're saying, but you think somebody's in the other room. That happened numerous times. Like I would come home and I'm like, who left the TV on? and it's not on, that kind of stuff. So we had those, and we did see shadows, like my son and stuff. We would see shadows go down the hallway. I thought the then husband had come home from our business, and then he's not home for another hour or two, things like that. But I was in the upstairs hallway, kind of between the master bedroom and the bathroom. And I thought we had an issue with the house, because all of a sudden, out of nowhere, in the middle of the hallway, there was this very thick wisp of white smoke that was probably maybe 4 or 5 inches long. I've never seen anything manifest in front of me in my life, so it did not cross my mind that that was a possibility. And I'm like, and the boys were home. The husband might have been home at the time, I don't remember. But I was like, you guys, what we got? And so we're like sniffing. I smell smoke anywhere. We're looking everywhere. No alarms are going off, and it was just gone fairly quickly, but yet it hung out in front of me long enough. And I saw it like grow, so that it ended up being those 4 or 5 inches. And I was very concerned. I'm like, so we're upstairs. I've got everybody up looking, can't find anything. And I'm like, okay, I've just lost my mind. And a few weeks later, it happened again on the main floor of the house in the kitchen. And again, it was within 2 feet in front of me. It was right in front of me. And it was the exact same experience. And that time I didn't start looking for anything on fire, because I knew all of a sudden I realized, I don't know what it is, but this is definitely paranormal.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. Pretty wild. I don't know. So it is interesting. It's fun to go different places and find out everybody else's experiences, right?
Yeah.
I was even just talking reminded me. I mean, I'm up in Western Massachusetts, not very well known part of Massachusetts. Everyone goes, "Oh, you're from Boston." No, I'm on the opposite side of the state. but I'm generally like 15 minutes away from Whately, like the Whately House where Lizzie Borden. That place is pretty well known. And actually, even while we were talking about, because I was like, I know I have this experience as a kid. I'm like, do I have a couple other? Like, I do. I have a friend of mine who's a podcaster. Her name is KT. She's had some really interesting stories happen because she renovates houses, so she's had a lot of odd experiences that she has caught on camera of like houses that she's been in the process of renovating, where she'll hear like music boxes going off, and like you can hear clear as day, and it's like, it's a house that her and her husband bought. And like there's nobody around, and like she has it posted up on her Instagram, where you can literally hear it clear as day, being like, like not unlike the whispers that you heard, that you can be like, I hear something's here and we got to find it. It's that exact type of experience. And she ended up catching that on her Instagram page. Yeah. Like
that's so wild.
Yeah. Those are really interesting. Yeah.
I have another
I completely
one
forgot about that one. I visit.
Yeah. I think
please go ahead. No.
I think this is a fun part of these conversations, because it does trigger stuff like, oh yeah, I forgot. And we think of these other things. And so then we go, okay, well, we have other people that have experienced it too. We're not crazy. It exists. I don't know what it is,
yes,
but it exists. We had one of the creepiest ones that we had, and this was the house I grew up in. My mother still lives there by herself. Wow. But we had our next door neighbor, which it was, but there was a field between us and them. Back in those days, there wasn't any houses between them. Between us, I mean. And they had a black cat that was just mean. I don't know what was wrong with this cat. She, I think it was a male. It was off. Yeah, it was a male. He was just kind of cuckoo. He was just, when we would go feed, their cat when they were gone, you just didn't go in the mini barn with him alone, because he would freak out. And seriously, he's that kind of cray. So I had a black cat as well at the time. And one evening, it was myself, my mom, and my then boyfriend. And so we were, at home at the house, and my cat was in the house. And because the neighbor's cat would just beat it up all the time. It was really ferocious, for no better term. So we heard this big crash in our basement, and we were like, what the heck was that? So we went down, investigated, and the mason jars that sat a good 2.5 feet, because we had these big, deep half walls. And so it sat way back in there. These mason jars, I don't remember exactly how many, but there were numerous, like maybe 4 or 5 that had come off and dropped the 3 or so feet onto the basement floor, the concrete floor. Didn't break them. I would have thought they would have broken, but they were on the ground. No reason that they would be there. And then I was like, where's the cat? And we couldn't find the cat anywhere. And my dad came home from bowling and he opened the door, and we were in the kitchen when he did or whatever. And the cat came in with him. And I'm like, wait a minute. The cat was in the house and there was no way he could have gotten out.
Yeah.
Nobody had been outside. We didn't have any openings. There was no way he could have gotten out. The creepiest part in the end of all that for us was that we never saw the scary cat ever again. He was gone. The neighbors, their cat just vanished.
Oh, wow.
That could be all like weird, quinky dinky. If people want to believe that, it's okay. But it stuck out to us as something very weird and seemingly paranormal. And I can't remember, there was some other stuff I think that happened at that point that night. But, I was 16. I don't remember all of it. But it was certainly weird.
Yeah.
No like kidding. The Twilight Zone. Brett, I have to ask, so your experiences, did this lead you then, do you think, because you said you do the Halloween makeup artistry. Forgive me if I'm butchering the way I'm saying it.
No, that's fine. I kind of said it in very brief passing. Yeah, very, very hardly at that to try and I try not to be a run-on sentence because I'm very prone to doing that. So, I worked at, but like I definitely grew up doing a lot of basically drawing was the first thing I ever did that was really encouraged in me because they were like, oh, he's finally not causing property damage. Let's just give him a pencil. Just give him a pencil and paper. We'll do that. Our insurance premiums will stay the same. That's great. We'll keep doing that. So but yeah, I mean, I think it would be fair to say that because of growing up in this old house and being prone to things that would be considered scary or definitely unnerving to many people, I think I leaned into, Halloween's my favorite holiday. I was born, legend has it, I was allegedly supposed to have been born on Halloween proper, but I slept in, as it were, and I was born later on in November. But yeah, I think the joke that my family now has, I go, well, we would have had you on Halloween if we know that it was going to be you that was going to be arriving. Otherwise, because I feel like you being born on Halloween would have been better for your brand. So it's but so Halloween's just one of my favorites. I really find my creativity. I find myself being much more energized, especially at my older age. Fall is really the vibe that I have, especially in New England fall. Smack dab in the middle of all the leaves changing, so it's nice and stereotypical out, and it's my favorite.
So are you a Scorpio?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm aware of it, but I never got myself particularly educated on astrology, unfortunately. I know certain things, but I never really got to I normally have my friends that are well versed on it explain things to me as they come up, and I listen to them as kindly as I can and be like, oh, okay, no, I guess that makes sense.
I miss Halloween. In our last house, we would decorate it up the front of it a haunted house for all the kids to come trick or treat, and we would dress up. Where we live now, it's a neighborhood, but we don't have streetlights, we don't have sidewalks, and so nobody trick or treats out here. So we haven't decorated in years, but I miss that. Yeah. I miss the fun of that. I miss the fun of that.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Jaycie, I feel like I trailed off without actually asking your question about the haunted attraction stuff. So growing up as a kid, then I drew stuff, and they tended to be a lot of drawn skulls, drawn Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was a very popular choice for me for a while. Got into comic books. But then, I became a martial arts instructor, which then began getting involved in a stunt performing, which I became a stunt performer at a show at an amusement park that's local to New England. Got blown up by Batman 5 times a day for a few summers, which was a fun gig. But once, because it's a year round it's a seasonal job where they're closed during the winter, but during the fall they bring out all the scary stuff, and they're like, oh, Brett, you know how to draw. And I got my Bachelor's of Fine Art from UConn. I was like, yeah, I know how to draw. And they're like, have you ever drawn on a face? And I go, I have not, but I am willing to give it a shot. So then that begat like a very long time of doing face painting and doing all sorts of fun things for the haunted attraction business. Became quite fond of it. So definitely spent a lot of time scaring people and being, scaring people, teaching other people how to be scary, how to scare ethically, because we're part of a big corporate entity. So like I always like to preface that I was a haunt actor, but I never scared children. Like that's always like a big big stigma whenever it's like, oh, you worked at a haunted house. Oh, so you just bullied children and made them cry? Like, no, actually I scared ethically. Like I actually scared for entertainment. Like it served a purpose of being like a method of entertainment. We didn't do it to traumatize people, because that's not where the fun was coming from.
Yes,
but all that to say,
that's awesome.
So who's to say that, was all that inspired by my earlier experiences? It very well could have been in some small part, but I think it's all just, especially being like I was the oldest of 3 Irish sons, so roughhousing, all that stuff, like it definitely just led me towards that kind of like rougher edge and whatnot. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I just love how everything, again, all the different, which for some could be considered either supernatural, paranormal, interesting though, how things line up when a group of people come together. The fact, Tricia, that you're here actually talking about ghost stories, and you're going to have to tell me again, but I know that you use the word witch, which isn't about ghost stuff. That's not what you do, but here you are. Yeah. And then I thought that was interesting. And then of course what Brett does and having done the makeup and the artistry and the drawing and all those, being a haunt actor. And then the weird little things that was just completely random, but I trained in jiu-jitsu. And so you were martial arts instructor. Yeah. So I'm just like, awesome. Isn't it interesting how things sometimes just draw people together?
Yeah. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's totally cool. Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. Oh my gosh. Where, Brett, would people be able to find you or anything about you online? Of course, I'll share it in the show notes too.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I really try to keep it simple and straightforward. If you just type in BK Artworks, all one word, it'll just take you to my Instagram. It'll take you to my coffee shop, which is where I have a lot of stuff for sale, like my Halloween enamel pins and whatnot. And you can see everything like there. I'm still maintained, like, even though I've kind of semi-retired from haunt work back in 2018, I've just been supplanting all my time spent being scary to drawing. So this is like, we're in the thick of like my heavy duty business season. So I'm just doing artwork all over the place. I have like I finished a huge group art show in East Hampton last weekend, and then I'm prepping to drop off artwork for another show that's due this Friday. So yeah, I'm glad I got to hop in and to catch a couple breaths before going right back to the work studio.
Yeah, no, I love it. And Tricia, how can we find you?
Yeah, you can find me at triciasbitesoflife.com or Tricia the Kitchen Witch on Facebook.
That's it, Kitchen Witch. I lost it. I couldn't heard you say it.
That's a great name. I love that name.
Yeah. I do too. I absolutely do. I can just see you dressed up as a witch in the kitchen. Anyway, I don't know. Sorry. She's brewing some stew. I don't know what's happening right now.
I know. I'm feeling some midnight margaritas for Practical Magic coming on soon. Yes. I feel like that's going to have to be.
Go for it.
It's going to have to happen this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to say, like, I love, I'm a big history buff. Well, not history buff, not that bad. I don't want to gas myself up too heavy, but I love doing the research where, like, there's an old historical theory that witches used to be brewers, which is like the reason, which is why hops, the green face, witches brew, which, all that fun stuff. So like, it's, I love that little tidbit of
oh my gosh, just another connection, because my husband and I actually play around with brewing beer, and I just put it together that we did that long before I knew that, like, it was supposed to be the brewers, and the broomstick was to let you know that the brew was ready.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh my gosh,
that's amazing.
Isn't it just freaking awesome? I love it. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, as a kid, it was mad scientist. Who knew?
Yeah.
Right? Oh my gosh. You guys, we could sit here and chat all day. This is so much fun. I'm so glad that you hopped on. I'm so glad both of you, we had struggled to get a time. And so I'm so happy that we were able to get it figured out so that you could both sit down and we could share and have such a fun conversation and share it with whoever wants to listen to it or watch it. I'm I'm honored to have had this conversation today, to be honest.
Oh,
Thank you. It's been so
Thank
much
you.
fun. And it's not very often I get to talk ghost stories.
Exactly.
Right?
I'm sure as hell not branded for ghost stories,
Right.
but
Only for the month of October. Then you
Only
gotta
for the
go.
month.
Then you go back to business. Yeah.
then I gotta go back to business. I'm like, but yeah, so I love it. All right, everybody out there watching, thanks for hanging out with us, and get ready to see what comes next with Cartwheels and Banana Peels, because there's all kinds of cool stuff coming down the pipe. So thanks, Brett. Thanks, Tricia. We will catch all of you guys next time.
Yeah.
Later.